Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so everyone give him a warm welcome.
Number 10. Monstrous Giants. Some of the most fascinating creatures described in the Bible are giants. There are multiple examples of giants in the Holy Book, with Goliath being the most famous. But the Bible also goes into some serious detail, specifically in the book of Genesis, about colossal monstrosities known as the Nephilim. They were violent superhuman offspring that were created when angels became tainted by their lust for human women in the days before Noah. The thing about the Nephilim was that they were so ugly, heinous, and sinful that God flooded the planet just to get rid of them. Noah then saved the rest of God's creatures with his mighty ark. The Bible describes the Nephilim as giant bullies. They thought they were better than ordinary humans, and their ruthlessness caused the planet to devolve into chaos. The book of Genesis also says that even when they were gone, they left behind a legacy of violence and fear. The Nephilim are an interesting subject because most creatures, monsters, and demonic entities in the Bible can be chalked up to metaphors. The great dragon wasn't a physical fire-breathing dragon, it was a metaphor for the devil, which itself may have been a metaphor for the Roman Empire. But the Nephilim are described as real beings. The Bible doesn't make them seem like metaphors for anything. On the contrary, it very much claims they were real hybrids of humans and angels that existed on Earth at some point in time. And now for number 9. But first I wanted to give a big shout to Sean Orr for the super thanks. We appreciate your support of this channel. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 9. Marduk. Marduk is one of the many gods whose name appears in the Bible. If the scripture is to be believed, Marduk was a blasphemous deity that wasn't to be trusted under any circumstances. Historical records show that Marduk was the chief god of Babylon, likely copied from the Greek god Zeus, known to the Romans as Jupiter. He can be seen in ancient depictions throughout Mesopotamia in human form, dressed in fine robes and carrying with him a spade, and a so-called snake dragon. He was also known as Baal, whose name would shift to become Belial later on, as Christianity turned him into a demon. In the books of Genesis and Revelation, the Bible refers to Marduk as a serpent. The Holy Book says Marduk was the focus of idol worship and that he was a false deity. It's his association with snakes that connected him so closely to the devil and helped cement his place in early Christianity as a force of evil. The truth is even more shocking, though. In the Babylonian creation myth, Marduk became the lord of the Anunnaki following a cosmic civil war. Many believe the Anunnaki were a real race of human-like beings from another planet who fled to Earth following some kind of calamity. These otherworldly beings then turned their focus to helping early humans who were still extremely primitive and hadn't yet formed societies. Marduk was supposedly their leader. If all of this is to be believed, it's no wonder Christianity destroyed Marduk's reputation and turned him into a demon. Number 8. Daniel's Beasts. The book of Daniel is a very special part of the Bible that deals with a prophetic vision of the apocalypse. In it, Daniel receives an extremely strange vision that predicts the second coming of Christ and the end of the empires of man. In the forecast of the future, he beholds 4 great beasts, some of the most terrifying monsters in the Bible. The first beast witnessed by Daniel was a lion with an eagle's wings. As Daniel watched, its wings were plucked off and it rose to stand on 2 feet like a man. Then the monster was given a man's heart. This beast was likely meant to be symbolic of the kingdom of Babylon. The second beast looked like a bear but had 3 rib bones in its mouth, clenched fiercely between its teeth. This beast was told to arise from its slumber and devour flesh. This monstrosity was symbolic of the Persian Empire, and the 3 teeth in the bear's mouth represented the 3 empires that Cyrus the Great had already conquered. Then came the third beast. It looked like a leopard, except it had 4 heads and 2 sets of wings on its back. This unnatural creation was likely symbolic of Greece under the control of Alexander the Great. The fourth beast came immediately after, described by Daniel as dreadful and terrible. It had teeth of iron, 10 horns growing from its head, and huge feet to trample the ground. Daniel watched as the beast stomped and broke apart everything in its path. This powerful beast was meant to represent the Roman Empire. The prophetic vision of the apocalypse suggested that these four kingdoms would fight against the chosen people of God. In the final days, these beastly empires would be defeated by the armies of the Lord. But if we're taking the book of Daniel at face value, it's been 2,000 years and the four kingdoms no longer exist. Number 7. Moloch. Moloch is an ancient pagan god that the Bible warned everyone about. Moloch was one of the few gods of the ancient world that could really be considered evil. The cult of Moloch, according to the Hebrew Bible, practiced barbarism at an exceptional level. The Holy Book claims the cult boiled children alive as offerings to their god. Rumor has it there are still devotees to Moloch alive today, and that they still carry out sacrifices in the name of this ancient deity. There are even old depictions of a thing called the Moloch idol. This was a 7-chamber chapel designed in the likeness of Moloch's bull form, with each of the 7 chambers reserved for a child sacrifice. Archaeologists and historians still debate the specifics around Moloch's worship. We know he was a real god of the Canaanites and was likely an enemy of early Semitic faiths. Ancient Judaic texts show that worshipping Moloch was strictly outlawed. Even by pagan standards 2,500 years ago, it seems worshipping Moloch was on the extreme end of the spectrum. If there was any pagan god that could give the devil a run for his money, it was the hedonist god known as Moloch. Number 6. The Army of the Apocalypse. There's an interesting modern interpretation of the book of Revelation that you might be interested in hearing about. Revelation 16:12-16 says that when the 6th angel poured out his bowl and the water of the Euphrates River dried, the final battle was to be fought against the kings from the east. Demonic spirits would then rise, and the kings of the world would rebel, resulting in the Battle of Armageddon. Modern interpretations believe the Battle of Armageddon will be fought against China, more specifically, a Chinese-led coalition joined by the Antichrist. This all has to do with the biblical prophecy of an army of 200 million soldiers being unleashed at the end of the Great Tribulation. In the Bible, the soldiers are described as a demonic horde sent to destroy a third of humanity. This is just one part of the apocalypse, which involves things like the stars falling from the sky, the rivers running red with blood, and all kinds of nasty plagues. The army of 200 million demonic monstrosities is just one of many unfortunate things the Bible claims will happen before Christ returns to earth. As for the army being from China, that's a fairly big stretch that's only recently started to gain traction in some religious circles. Traditional scholars maintain that the book of Revelation merely suggests that the armies of man, meaning all the armies of the world, will rise up to fight against the Lord at the end of days. The 200 million demons is just a small part of the horrors that are said to occur during the apocalypse. Do you think the Battle of Armageddon will really be fought against China? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 5. The Beasts of Revelation. The book of Revelation holds yet another vision of the end of the world, and once again, there's mention of some horrendous beasts. But this time there are only 2. John, who's given a vision of the apocalypse as it will happen, sees 2 beasts rise up out of the sea. The first is an abhorrent thing given authority and power by the dragon, or the devil. It emerges from the abyss with 7 heads and 10 horns, each one topped with a crown. The name of this beast is Blasphemy, and it has the skin of a leopard, the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion. As it appears from the sea, a mortal wound on one of its heads heals itself, causing the people of Earth to stare and wonder. The humans are so fascinated by the unholy abomination that they follow it, and for that reason most biblical scholars agree that the first beast is the Antichrist. You might also notice that the beast in Revelation has characteristics of all 4 beasts seen by Daniel in his apocalyptic vision. John's monster also has the 10 horns symbolizing the Roman Empire, showing yet again how much early Christians viewed Rome as a threat against them. It's a little ironic in hindsight, seeing as Rome quickly became home for the church. The second beast in Revelation doesn't come from the sea, but instead rises out of the earth. It's briefly described in the Bible as having a pair of horns and speaking in the tongue of the dragon. This is generally agreed to be the false prophet. In the final days of humanity, both beasts join forces with Satan to fight against Christ, only to be thrown into the lake of fire. Number 4. The Rahab. In the Hebrew Bible, Rahab is the name of a mystical sea monster. This isn't to be confused with the word Rahab, which means arrogance, or the Egyptian poet by the same name. Rahab is also the Hebrew word for abyss, the dark chasm from which evil is unleashed in the final days of the Antichrist. The Rahab might sound like the Leviathan, but these two beasts aren't the same. In Isaiah, Rahab is described as an ancient monster that rises from the depths of the ocean to pierce the dragon. We know the dragon is the name of the devil in the Bible, so this single passage suggests Rahab was a beast of such great strength, it could fight Lucifer himself. In Job, there's a passage that says, "His understanding he smileth through Rahab," once again implying that the sea monster has the strength of God and can smite his enemies. The best guess biblical scholars have is that the sea monster known as Rahab is directly related to the Babylonian sea goddess Tiamat. In Babylonian mythology, Tiamat fights against Marduk for supreme power over all the other gods. It seems both characters were incorporated into the Bible, and Tiamat was transformed into a leviathan of her own and set against the forces of evil. Number 3. The Ophanim. The Ophanim are celestial monstrosities from Christian mythology that are said to be on the side of good. Their description in the Book of Enoch says they're angels of the highest order of knowledge, entities that never sleep, and that guard the throne of God in heaven. But these aren't angels in the way you might be thinking. They aren't men and women with long hair, silver armor, and flaming swords. The Ophanim are almost described like machines, spirits encased inside a series of ever-moving wheels that are covered in eyeballs. The Ophanim are so unusual that it's no wonder you don't see them depicted in a lot of medieval artwork. The Book of Daniel mentions the wheels as being covered in burning fire, with their eyes always watching for any incursion into the kingdom of heaven. Some have even suggested that Ophanim are the wheels of God's personal heavenly chariot. In Christian myth, these things are often referred to as the many-eyed ones. Number 2. Dagon. Dagon is described in the Bible as a fish god. He's also depicted as a kind of merman. Whatever you want to think of him, Dagon was one of the weirder deities the Bible warned its followers about. He got his origins in ancient Assyria and was the fishy father of another god named Baal, sometimes also called Marduk. Dagon was worshipped by the Philistines, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, and if the Bible is to be believed, even the Israelites themselves briefly fell under the spell of the slimy merman. It's in the Book of Judges that the name Dagon comes up frequently. He is referred to as the god of the Philistines, the same deity they offered up sacrifices to. After the death of Israel's king Saul, the Philistines even cut off his head and then placed it in Dagon's temple of worship. There's no mistaking that Dagon was one of the most popular gods outside the kingdom of Israel about 2,500 years ago. In Assyrian lore, he was little more than a mermaid. Stories describe Dagon as having the upper body of a man and the lower body of a fish. Dagon briefly seduced the people of Israel into worshipping him, but then he was cut to pieces by Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God. Yahweh forced Dagon to bow before him in the Old Testament before cutting off his head and hands. This effectively removed Dagon from the picture. Very little mention of the fish god exists after his supposed judgment and execution by God. In all likelihood, he stopped being worshipped around the same time gods like Moloch and Marduk fell out of favor, roughly 2,000 years ago. Number 1. The Leviathan and the Behemoth. Few creatures from the Bible get attention quite like the Behemoth and Leviathan. These two monstrosities have intrigued people for centuries, but nobody's ever been able to determine what exactly the monsters were, or are. They both appear in the Book of Job, with the Behemoth being described as a creature created by God with immense power. It has bones made of bronze, limbs made of pure iron, and a tail so thick it's like a cedar tree. It's said to live in the marshes and rivers, and has no fear of anything. The Bible even claims the Behemoth is the first among the works of God. There's endless speculation over what the Behemoth could be. The description sounds an awful lot like a hippopotamus that lives in the marshes. Others think the behemoth is in fact a dinosaur. The third option is that the author of Job was describing a mythological monster that people in biblical days thought was real. The Leviathan is supposedly a creature of biblical proportion that rises from the depths of the sea. It's described as being so big, it can destroy entire ships. Much like the behemoth, there are a few different options for the identity of the monster. It could be a sea serpent, the legendary kraken, or something as simple as a whale. Either way, these two beasts were so fierce and frightening, they were used as examples of God's ability to create monsters. Which of the Bible's other gods do you find the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!